Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be breaking down all of the action from Week 11 in the NFL. It was a bit of an underwhelming day of games, if we can be honest, but ended with a pretty fun primetime Sunday night game between the Vikings and the Broncos. Not the most exciting matchup on paper, but came down to a pretty thrilling finish. So, Logan, I think we have to start with Denver here because although there was some Josh Dobbs magic in this game for Minnesota, it wasn't enough at the end. The Broncos have now won 4 straight, and they're sitting at 500. How impressed are you by that turnaround, and how legit do you think that is?
I'm very, very impressed, Carson. If you've been following the show since the start of the season or even last year, the Broncos were probably one of the teams in the NFL that I was lowest on coming into this season. Primarily, the biggest reason was that I thought Russell Wilson was completely washed. Last season was some of the worst quarterback tape and film that I've ever seen from a quarterback in all of my years of watching football, of cognitively being able to process what's going on in the field. 2022 Russell Wilson was one of the worst quarterbacks I had ever watched, and it wasn't a dramatic physical drop-off. It wasn't he was, way less mobile or his arm strength was completely cooked. It was more decision-making awareness and stuff you just don't see from developed quarterbacks that are this far into their careers. It's Russ not spotting open guys on slant routes, wide open guys on drags. That was my biggest issue, and Russ has really had a bounce-back year. I think it's kind of flown under the radar considering the Broncos aren't one of the best teams in the league record-wise, but he's done a really good job this year of not turning the ball over.
Yeah.
And he has showcased those physical traits that I thought that had moderately regressed. His arm doesn't look horrible. He has lost a little bit mobility and play creation from his MVP level days, but it's not completely gone there. And at the end of this game, it's classic Russ. He's not doing too much. This is him nickel and diming all the way down the field. Him and Samaje Perine tore up the Vikings defense at the end of this one, just wide open. Every single play marching down there. It's a really remarkable turnaround that I didn't expect, Carson. And you mentioned it. This is a big win for them record-wise to get them to 500, but they beat real teams. I think those are off games from Kansas City and Buffalo considering their normal standards, but those are massive wins over two of the teams that coming into this season we thought were maybe the two best in the AFC. I didn't really anticipate this coming at all. Now, I don't think the Broncos are perfect. I think that their defense still leaves some to be desired. I think over the middle of the field and coverage is still where I have my biggest issues with the Broncos defense. But this is a legit turnaround, and the defense has looked much, much better over the past couple weeks. This is, Carson, now 5 consecutive games where they have held their opponent to 20 points or less. This is a real encouraging turnaround, and I think we've seen it with other teams, the Jaguars, the Lions. When you are so far down in the depths of just losing and getting your ass kicked week in, week out, it's the most challenging thing I think to do in football, Carson, when your momentum and your trajectory is going downhill, and that's where we thought the Broncos were trending. Maybe the worst team in football after they got 70-pieced by the Miami Dolphins. It's really encouraging, and with how underwhelming the bottom of the AFC contenders are, the Broncos have a real outside shot at the playoffs. You don't believe? I see that little smirk. Dude.
First of all, I loved that mid-sentence audible. You started with real, and then I winced, and then you added the outside shot. I don't think so, man.
Browns don't have a QB. The Steelers don't have a QB. The Jets don't have a QB. Look, man, this is like Dumb and Dumber. I'm not saying that you should put your mortgage on this, but I'm saying there's a chance, man. There is a chance.
There is a chance. I still think that the Browns have a better formula because that defense is so elite that they can win games with just inept quarterback play. We saw it again today. I honestly like the football the Texans are playing a bit more right now. The Bills are tough because of the strength of schedule, but they are so much better as a football team. So seeing Joe Burrow knocked out for the season, it's not impossible. You're right. But I do still have some real skepticism with this Broncos team. You give props to the defense, and they have done an awesome job of forcing turnovers. And that has really been the key to this entire win streak. The Broncos have turned the ball over twice in the last 4 weeks, and they have forced 13 turnovers. This is still the worst run defense in football by yards per attempt allowed, and that isn't a trend that's gotten much better. The Bills ran the football down their throat in a way that they have not done to anybody all season. The Vikings, one of the worst rushing attacks in football, dominated them on the ground today for 175 yards. And this is still one of the worst pass rushes in football, the lowest pressure rate in the NFL entering this week. And they get some pressure in this game, but a lot of that I think is just Dobbs' tendency to hold onto the ball for an obscenely long time. So it's one of the worst defensive fronts in the NFL. And what I give props to them for is cleaning up some of the just terrible miscommunications and blown coverages that were biting them earlier in the season. There's no doubt they've progressed, they've tightened things up, and they've been better situationally. But I still look at a defense that isn't legitimately good to me, and offensively, they're solid. I just think this is a team that's gone from very bad to very average. And I give them props for not mailing it in because, oh my God, when you allow 70 points and you start 1-5, Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, things could have turned in a very ugly direction, and it didn't. And Russ has done a really good job of taking care of the football, and he's been effective with that quick passing game, and they've been running the ball really well. They found something with that, leaning on that more and more in this win streak. And some of their skill position players went out there and made real plays in this game, dude. Like Cortland Sutton, watching him. We talked about him as a potential trade target for the Bills before the deadline. I just can't help but think when he's making these awesome contested catches, he is 10 times the player that a Gabe Davis is. And multiple times in this game, dude, like that diving catch outside the numbers, the crazy one-handed grab on 4th down, another athletic play for that go-ahead touchdown. He went out there and balled. Judy's playing good football. This is a team that we expected to be solid. I picked them to win 8 games, and it feels like now they've reached that level. I just don't know if I want to go crowning them for getting to that point, especially when a win like last week was so self-induced by the Bills. There's no question they're playing much better football. I'm just not sold on them as like a real good team where if you see them in the first round of the playoffs, you're like, oh man, I still think there's a real ceiling on what they can do.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, too. I want to give a shout to another skill position guy that's caught on over these past couple weeks. You shout out the running game. Big shout out to Javonte Williams. I just think with his injuries that he's accrued, I think a lot of people have forgotten what Javonte's about. He's so good at breaking tackles. He's an explosive runner. I tend to agree with you, Carson. It's just, I don't know, the bottom of the AFC really is underwhelming, man. The Chargers are always going to Charger.
Yeah.
The Bengals are without a QB. And there is a level of confidence that has been instilled back into me and a level of faith that I have with Russell Wilson at the helm of this team, just as a steadying hand. I bagged on Russ more than any other quarterback last season. I probably would have had him as a bottom 10 starter coming into this week. That is a really big change to me that matters in the scope of this. When you're looking at just other, QB plays and other full rosters, the Broncos aren't out of it yet. Let me ask you this. They got the same record as another team in their division. Do you like the Raiders or the Broncos more?
Well, the Broncos actually have a better record now because the Raiders lost today.
Oh, true.
I like the Broncos more. I think that the Raiders have the better defense, but I do trust Russ a lot more than what's going on with Aiden O'Connell and the boys in that Raiders offense. Like, there's no question that Russ has been a really good game manager this year. He is a better athlete than last season. He's in better condition. He's been more effective as a runner. I want to give props also to another skill position dude who balled out today, Samaje Perine, especially on that last drive, really carried the load, slipping out into the flat after he did his job as a pass blocker, very effective as a receiver. They've got a nice enough little thing going.
Yeah, man.
They're better than the Raiders, I think, who, by the way, played a fine football game today, but they're still very, very, very average.
I'm with you. I'm not ready to do it, but, hey, man, if we see the Broncos sustain this a couple more weeks, the only thing that I want to push back on is that the Broncos haven't done this. They haven't blown a team out, and it's been by the skin of their teeth, like you said. It seems every week. The Bills one, they escape. This one, they escape.
Yeah.
It's the Broncos pulling out some late-game magic.
With a plus 11 turnover differential, Logan, you cannot sustain being plus 3 in the turnover margin every single week, no matter how good you are at taking care of the football and how good you are at turning the opposition over. That's just unsustainable. But playing against Josh Dobbs, is a pretty good matchup if you do like to force turnovers. He does have the magic moments, but he is also probably going to give you the football a few times. So we've talked about the hype train with him, the Pastronaut, Minnesota finding something, making a push for a playoff spot of their own. What did you think about what you saw from him and the Vikings today?
One, I do think I was really impressed with the running game. Granted, it is against the Denver Broncos. I'll say this: I think I'd rather have Josh Dobbs than Kenny Pickett. Am I out of pocket for that, Carson?
I don't think it's close. No offense to Kenny.
Yeah.
Give me the playmaker.
No offense to Kenny. Me and one of my roommates, we did our actual full rankings of every QB that has taken a snap this season. So if you do call upon it, Carson, I do have my full, I think, fleshed out to 35 guys list of QBs that we can refer to. I believe Pickett came in at 27 for me. I had Dobbs at about 17, 18, somewhere in there. It's like Dobbs is just a damn good borderline guy to have in there. There's guys like Dobbs are really valuable in today's league, especially with all the injuries that we see come down this week. The Burrows of the world, Herbert going down at points. Not this season, but anytime a big QB goes down, it's really valuable to have. And Dobbs looks awesome. I know that he is prone to holding on to the rock too long. He is prone to making mistakes, but he's a playmaker. And there's the third down early in this game when he just shakes off a D lineman, ends up lobbing it into the end zone, the rushing TD. Dobbs doesn't fear the moment. He's ready to make plays. He's athletic, and he's not afraid to sling that ball. Dobbs isn't a perfect quarterback by any means, but I think he's a lot closer to average than he is bottom tier quarterbacks in the league. I take Josh Dobbs over a lot of guys, and I think with Kirk's contract up, is there any conversation for Minnesota considering Dobbs would be a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive, and a lot younger? Do you think Minnesota should explore that? I mean, I probably think Kirk's going to incur a bill of $35 to $40 million, somewhere in that ballpark, no matter how many years you get him on. I know this was a dilemma they faced when his contract came up last time, but I mean, this is a guy that's going to be 36 next season. Do you think that's something the Vikings should, explore at all?
Well, Kirk is way better than Dobbs, but I think that they have reached a natural end point in that relationship. Kirk has been playing his best football this season, and unfortunately, it didn't get them anywhere meaningful. Maybe it could have if they didn't have some bad turnover luck of their own in those early weeks, but they were still a pretty average football at the end of the day. Pretty average football team. And I think that with his age, this is time for them to pivot. And Dobbs is a good bridge quarterback. He's not a guy you want to give a big multi-year contract to, obviously, but can he float the ship? Can he win you some games as you develop a young quarterback behind him? I do think so, because it is rare. The fearlessness and the athleticism that you get from him, a lot of guys in the NFL just don't have those athletic tools, and they don't have that aggression pushing the ball downfield, and you get the good and the bad. You get two amazing touchdowns. You get a huge third down conversion where he hangs in the pocket for obscenely long, and he's got no room to step up, but he finds a wide open TJ Hawkinson. Dobbs does stuff like that every week. In the red zone, he makes magical plays that only a handful of dudes can make. But then you also have from him this year 13 turnovers. He fumbles the ball 3 times in this game, and he throws the interception. And that's what we saw as the weeks went by in Arizona. He had this awesome start to the year where it was like, wow, this guy's athletic, he's aggressive, throwing the ball downfield, and he's not turning the ball over. But then that pretty quickly expired, and it was like, all right, he still does make these big plays, but it comes with a lot of turnovers, a lot of negative plays as well. And that's just why I was always a bit more hesitant to buy in on the hype train for Dobbs in Minnesota, because I feel that those tendencies are just always going to be part of the Josh Dobbs experience, and they still are. But as a bridge quarterback, absolutely. I would be perfectly fine with him. He will make you a respectable football team. I think he's a good leader. I think he's exciting for a fan base. He's solid. I mean, he's better than some of the legitimately incompetent guys out there, for sure.
Very true. I think it's what they should do, man. And again, this is a Vikings offense that has been without Justin Jefferson during Josh Dobbs' tenure as the starter. I mean, we still have yet to see them fully realized at their full capacity, because I think Jordan Addison is the best number 2 you could ask for. I think KJ Osborne is a game-breaking talent speed-wise, and Justin Jefferson is arguably the best receiver on the planet. I'd give the nod to Tyreek.
Bro, you got to mention TJ.
Oh, yeah.
TJ has been insane this year.
Awesome to have. Wasn't really balling with Kirk. He had some bad games. But with Dobbs, he's been a phenomenal release valve. So I'm really excited to see what the Vikings offense will look like at full strength and at full health. But, I just don't think it's worth it. I think, like you said, man, I don't think really the timelines are matching up. And what this will allow the Vikings to do is, pivot and move their money somewhere else. One, you're going to be searching, inevitably. This is what's going to happen when you have a guy like Dobbs at QB. We praise him now. We love him now because he is the bridge guy. Inevitably, the conversation is going to turn, well, how do they get the star of that guy that's going to put Minnesota over the top? Is that guy going to become available? We don't know yet. There are going to be quarterbacks that hit the market. I don't know if you're going to prefer them to Josh Dobbs when he will be inexpensive. He will be young. So it's going to be about finding that new star quarterback when they get to this new stage of them. But it's also going to allow them to take some of the money that they are paying towards Kirk and would pay towards Kirk into getting more defensive talent and building them back up on the other side of the ball and replenishing the troops through free agency, so to speak. Yeah. I like where the Vikings are headed. Both of these teams, I think, have outside shots at the playoffs. I still probably prefer Minnesota just because I think the bottom of the NFC is weaker than the AFC, despite all the quarterbacks being out. I think the NFC is a little easier, but I think that's what Minnesota should do, man. And I think it's a bad spot. I mean, Josh Dobbs can make you a 500 team. He's going to keep you competitive, and he's going to keep you in the playoff hunt. That's what he's been doing thus far this season.
Yeah, the NFC is garbage outside of 4 teams, man. And that's one thing that this game made me think about is both of these teams could make the playoffs. Minnesota, I still think, is probably going to make the playoffs when you look at their schedule down the stretch and how weak the other contenders for the wild card spots are. And it just made me think about how few actually good teams there are this year. Like, my list of good teams, Logan, I'm interested in yours, would be Eagles, Chiefs, Niners, Ravens, Cowboys, Lions, for sure. I think I would still have the Dolphins and Jags in there. And then I would have the Bills and Browns peeking in from the outside. The Bills clearly talented enough, but they've been so erratic, haven't played enough good football as of late. The ceiling is certainly there. And then the Browns, I mean, they do so much so well, but just the inept quarterback play. So I feel like just a quarter of the league this year is actually good, and injuries play a factor in that, but it just feels like one of those years where anybody can beat anybody pretty much any week. Everybody has ugly performances.
For sure. I think I agree with that list. The teams that would be on the cusp for me outside of the Bills and Browns too, the Texans slowly trending upward. I mean, with CJ Stroud balling the way he is, I would say the Chargers too, but the Chargers are just the Chargers, with Herbert.
Yeah.
The other team I would say, and this is solely because of the QB play and nothing else, the other 2 teams on the cusp would be the Saints and the Bucks for me. I would still have the Bucks above the Saints as a team, but damn, Baker is killing me, man. Week to week, Baker is killing me. I mean, he shoots him in the foot twice in this game. He probably should have had
today.
I don't know, 4 picks.
Yeah,
I like the Bucks top to bottom, but Baker puts a ceiling on this team. So those are the teams on the cusp. I think I agree with you. No, I mean this feels like one of the. I don't know. I don't know if it's weaker, if it's more balanced. I don't know what the terminology is, but yeah, man, you're right, dude. Week to week, it feels like, hey, man, they made a movie about it, man. Any given Sunday, man.
Yeah, that's right. I cannot believe you brought up the Bucks in this conversation, though. The Bucks are not good, Logan. The bottom has fallen out. Baker is exactly who we thought he was.
Don't do that, man.
Bro, I swear, I counted 18 balls that hit 49ers defenders in the hands today from Baker Mayfield. And, of course, they still can't run the ball whatsoever.
He's like a professional ball counter, man.
Well, I like to think so. Yeah. And Baker was making it pretty tough out there, man, because once you get above a dozen, I get a little bit shaky with the numbers. So hopefully that's accurate. In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours.
Outside of this, maybe the game of the day was a divisional matchup between the Bears and the Lions. Justin Fields returns after missing a handful of games, almost leads Chicago to a victory, but of course that's not possible for them. What's your biggest takeaway from this one?
I'm really impressed at the Lions top to bottom outside of Jared Goff. Just week to week, man, they really astound me. The line play, the trench guys, how they're able to consistently run the football. It's just such a good offensive formula because Goff still is somewhat of a variable at the quarterback position, man. I have such a love-hate relationship with Goff. It's like Dak. You know what I mean? It's like, man, dude, Goff and Dak are so similar to me in the sense that they've got great arm talents. They throw such beautiful balls. When they're on, when the game plan is clicking, when everything is going right, I mean, they can torch defenses for 350, 3 TDs, and probably 1 pick because that's what they do. And then you have these games where Goff really isn't on the ball. Now, I will say not all the interceptions are on him. The first one, it looked like Laporta got chipped by that corner, kind of threw the timing off. Now, granted, Goff did look like he threw the ball in front of Laporta. Like, that may still get picked, even if Laporta doesn't get chipped. But it goes right to the Bears DB. The second one, the interception to Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's right to the linebacker camping over the middle. Actually, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. I think all of these picks were on Goff. Maybe there's another quarterback that I was watching. No, these were disgusting. Throws it right to a linebacker camping over the middle. The third one, probably the worst pick, triple coverage to Josh Reynolds. Just shout out Jared Goff. But it was a great bounce-back game down the stretch. Big play to Jamison Williams. And they didn't put their head down. You know what I mean? Goff locked in after that. And something that one of my roommates mentioned during the game, he's a Rams fan, has watched Goff for a long time. He said, normally when Goff starts out with these bad games, he craters. You know, he completely tanks and, you know, loses his mojo. This one, he didn't put his head down. They were really resilient. And they steal this game. I mean, the Bears are up 26-14 with 4:15 left. And I just want to say, dude, typical Bears game, 3rd and 9. Wide open guy crossing the middle of the field. They could get the first down if Justin Fields just throws it underneath. Probably ice this game after the first Lions TD. Fields decides to throw it into double coverage downfield. They can't connect. Lions get the ball back, steal this game. That's what makes Fields so hard to evaluate to me, Carson, because I'm not completely out on Justin Fields. And with his physical abilities, I don't know if I could ever be fully out on Justin Fields. Because it portions in this game. Yeah. Big arm. Super fast. They weaponized him as a runner. You know, first game back, they said, let's put you on the ground. That's where you're best suited. 104 rushing yards in this game. And then on the flip side of that, you have times where he's holding on to the ball too long. He seems oblivious to pressure. Where he doesn't have a really good internal clock or feel in the pocket. Like, he just doesn't feel the game exceptionally well. It's one of the things I love about C.J. Stroud is that his feel for the game, even when he's, you know, he throws 3 picks, and that's a quarterback who I think one of the picks wasn't on Stroud. All of Goff's picks were on him. I think that's the QB I was thinking of. Stroud feels the game impeccably well. When the pocket is closing around him, he knows, I need to move to buy time or I need to get rid of the ball now. Fields doesn't feel the game well. So it's just, I don't know, man. I'm perpetually confused by Justin Fields, it feels like. I don't know if he'd be dramatically better in a situation, but I want to see it. You know, if it's Atlanta, if it's another QB-needy team. The Jets, you know what I mean, with how bad Zach Wilson is. I want to see Fields in a different situation because the physicals pop off the page with him. It's just the little stuff, the little details of the QB position. But I thought it was a good bounce-back game, but the Bears do Bears things. They don't close the game out. They don't burn a bunch of time off the clock on their final drive. So I don't know. I feel the same way pretty much about both these teams, but I was more impressed that the Lions were able to be really resilient in this one and bounce back. Carson, it's the first time the Lions have been 8-2 since John F. Kennedy was in office, man. Remarkable stuff.
Oh, and what a tragic loss that was. The young, charming fella from Massachusetts. The Fields thing is really interesting because it was an abysmal start to the year, and it felt like the experiment had sort of run its course. And now there's reports before this game that the Chicago front office is going to need to be blown away by a prospect, or things are going to need to dramatically change for them to move on from Fields. And I really do think the jury is still out, and that these final 6 games are going to swing this decision, because you absolutely see incredible moments in this game. And I thought he played quite well overall. I agree with you on the awareness, the internal clock. It's sort of the blessing and curse of being such a uniquely great play extender. He can have these moments where he's running around behind the line of scrimmage for 8 seconds, and then he can have these moments where that turns into something great or that turns into something catastrophic. But the arm talent, I mean, that touchdown throw to DJ Moore, that had zip, that had just the right amount of arc. He just fit that right over the DBs. Beautiful touchdown pass. And then dominating as a runner in this game. The one thing that Chicago was for some reason shying away from early in the season, they have gone back to. That's what makes him a starting caliber quarterback, is that he is Lamar Jackson level as a rusher. That meaning like one of the absolute greatest rushing quarterback talents we have ever seen. And his production these last 4 weeks that he's played in, including the game that he went out midway through, 211 passing yards per game, 9 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, 8.7 yards per attempt. That is elite efficiency as a passer, while he's averaging 58 rushing yards per game and 5.7 yards per attempt. That is extremely encouraging, especially from where he was at the start of the season. So you got a real decision to make here, man, because taking a guy like Caleb Williams, who I would still pick at number 1, I'm pretty confident is going to be better than Justin Fields, regardless of how he plays down the stretch. I just think that dude is a special prospect, and Fields, there's still questions in terms of how he reads the game, how he is intellectually as a quarterback. But the haul that you could get from trading that first overall pick, man, if you do think that Fields is good enough to build around, could give you foundational pieces offensively alongside him, where the Bears are still largely undermanned, and then you could start to actually get the most out of him instead of feeling like he has to overcome the situation. So I don't have a take on that yet. I think we'll see as this plays out. Fields has played himself back to the point where he's been really quite good over these last few starts, and I think that the jury is out.
I think it's going to come down to wins and losses.
Oh, well, that's not good for the Bears. That's not good at all.
Hasn't been good for the Bears in a minute. It's tough. I don't know how you could be on the fence. I don't know. To me, it's a no-brainer, man. Like if Chicago, because they a masterstroke by Chicago last season, fleecing Carolina. I mean, genius to get that number 1 pick. That is invaluable. Because that's probably going to be the number 1 pick, right? The Bears are probably going to be, top 10, top 5, somewhere in there, depending on how the rest of their schedule lays out. So they'll have another opportunity at a top guy, but the Panthers pick is going to be number 1. And you could get a haul. You think about the biggest ones in NFL history, Carson. I think about the Rams, what they got back in the RG3 trade. Kind of waffed that one away. They blew all those picks. You think about the Ricky Williams trade. You're going to get a boatload. Probably, if you traded away that pick, I would anticipate 3 firsts at a minimum, maybe more, along with a multitude of, 1 or 2 second and third round picks down the line, or a player. Like, that's the real haul you could get from that. That being said, I don't think I could bring myself. I would try to get Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. and figure it out. You know what I mean? With that as your foundation on offense, I think you can figure it out the rest of the way. The offensive line needs work. This entire team, needs an overhaul. And maybe that's the plus on the side of trading away the pick, that you could rebuild your entire organization. You think about the Herschel Walker trade, for example, how that rejuvenated and built the Cowboys dynasty. There's ways to go about it, but if I was the Bears, I'm definitely leaning on trying to get Williams and Harrison Jr., but I don't think you can just turn away offers. I definitely would be listening draft night. Is Caleb too good for you to listen to offers?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The jury is still out. It's going to depend on how Fields plays. My feeling is probably yes, because I think that if you pass up on a generational quarterback talent and you are to any extent on the fence about your guy after 3 years, you're probably going to live to regret that. But you're talking about the level of package you're looking at. We just saw a precedent, man. The Bears just traded the number 1 overall pick to the Panthers. And what did they get for that? They got a top 10 pick in last year's draft. They got what is likely going to be the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. They got 2 seconds, and they got a star level player right now in DJ Moore. So it's just going to depend on the level that he plays at. But if you do think that he is your guy, that is the kind of package that can rebuild this franchise pretty quickly. So I would probably lean towards taking the superior talent, because quarterback is the most important position in football. When you have a chance to take a guy like that, you just do it. But I think that it's a conversation. So interesting dynamic to watch for the rest of this year. For the Lions, I do give them props for hanging in this game, for coming back to win. I give props to Jared Goff for putting his nuts on the table in those last couple drives and making big-time throws. Last play of the game, they do what they do best. They just overpower the Bears at the line of scrimmage. Like, they were able to keep it together. And overcoming 4 turnovers to win a game like this is impressive, regardless of the opponent. But it is concerning to me to see really bad Jared Goff for the first time all year. He's had a couple mistakes here and there where you go, okay, that's not good. But he threw 3 picks in this game. It could have been 5, bro. Like, there were a couple other that hit Bears defenders in the hands, sailing balls, overthrowing dudes, making careless decisions. So that's just something to monitor, because he has been so good. He has been so efficient. He's had like one of the lowest interception rates in football over these last couple years. He has to keep playing that way. They can't afford the backbreaking mistakes against the really good teams. And then I just don't think this defense is playing at a high enough level right now for them to be viewed as true contenders. Like, they're so stacked offensively. Their formula is so reliable with what they can do at the line and with the run game, to where they're going to beat up on whatever wild card teams they get in the NFC. But beyond that, like in these last 4 weeks, they let up 38 points and 500 yards to the Ravens. They let up 38 points and 420 yards to the Chargers. They just let up 26 points and 334 yards to a Bears offense that isn't good. That's concerning. And Aiden Hutchinson makes a big-time play to clinch this one. And the front is still good, but it's the concern secondary. It's the regression we've seen since a stronger start to the year. I just don't like how they've fared against good offenses, but they're still very good. And hey, the sign of a really good team is when you do win a game like this, when you do turn the ball over 4 times, and that's what they did. And it's just another testament to the season that the Lions are having, whether they're true Super Bowl caliber or whether they're just really good playoff team that is going to make it to the divisional round. Either way, it's a successful season, I think, and a testament to what they're doing organizationally. Okay, Logan, we got to talk about your Steelers, because they played the Browns today in the ultimate they are who we thought they were game for both teams, 13-10. I thought this was going to finish as a 10-10 tie, and frankly, I was kind of rooting for that. What did you take away from this loss to the Browns for Pittsburgh?
I'm just sad. This is a really sad game.
I'm sad to
as
know
a
ya.
Steelers fan.
I'm sad to know ya. Yeah.
They are who we thought they were. I mean, Kenny Pickett just doesn't look like the guy, man. I talked a little bit about this earlier. Like, Kenny is 27, 28 for me, and I know this is a tough draw. This is a tough draw. It is a top 3 defense in football. The Browns are top 5 versus the pass. They're top 10 versus the rush. They're number 5 in pressure rate. They're number 1 in sack percentage, and they're number 1 in defensive DVOA. All of those numbers point to Cleveland being one of the best defenses in football. And Kenny faced relentless pressure in this one. But it goes back to something that Mike Tomlin said when we were discussing Kenny Pickett, when, people want to bring the hammer down. Kenny should be measured by wins and losses. Well, that's typically how we measure how good a football team is. You know what I mean? It's a team sport. It's not an individual QB sport, although we like to attribute wins and losses to just quarterbacks. This is a game you have to win. As a starting quarterback with an elite defense, I don't care who's on the other side of the ball. You are playing a third-string quarterback, and you have to generate. Again, it's all within context. You have to generate one sustained drive to win this freaking game, man. That is what curdles my blood. That is what plucks my nerves, man. We got to get one good drive. Kenny Pickett is holding this team back. Miscommunications with receivers. General inaccuracy. When you're this physically limited as a quarterback, when you're small with tiny hands and you're not mobile, and
that's
you're
personal.
not physically imposing, you don't have a big arm. The one thing you could do is be on time and accurate, right? Think about maxed out Kenny Pickett. Maxed out Kenny Pickett is Brock Purdy. Maxed out Kenny Pickett is Tua. And I'm not throwing shots at these guys, but I'm talking about when you're that limited physically, that is how you maximize yourself. You limit mistakes, you're on time, you're accurate. That is the one thing that Kenny's been good at this year is limiting turnovers. But I'm not going to give you flowers because you're not gifting the team the ball. You need to do more. And again, man, it's one drive. If the Steelers put together one drive where they score a touchdown, they win this football game. Our one TD comes from Jaylen Warren, and God bless that boy. 9 carries, 129 yards. He's the only thing that keeps us close in this game. He's explosive. He's a playmaker, and we are blessed to have him. But again, man, we needed one sustained drive from Kenny, and if we get in the end zone, the Pittsburgh Steelers win this football game. Everybody wanted to talk about, the Steelers have lucked into it, man. They draw a backup QB in this one. They draw a backup QB in Jake Browning. And what did I tell you last week, Carson? I've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers lose a whole lot of football games to a whole lot of bad quarterbacks. And you said we've seen Mike Tomlin do it with bad QBs. Kenny's up there as one of the bad ones.
Oh, yeah.
Tomlin and this defense are dragging Kenny to being a respected QB in this league. This is just a game that you have to win. With our playoff chances on the line, an interdivisional game against a third-string quarterback who looked like dog water in his first appearance of the year. It's an inexcusable loss for me, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I put this squarely on the shoulders of Kenny Pickett in this offense. I'm tired of it, man.
Well, listen. I don't want to rub salt in the wound, but I've said a lot of this stuff. And we had a conversation a couple weeks ago where I just kind of said, point blank, Kenny sucks. What does he do at the level of an average starting quarterback? Even you mentioned limiting mistakes. I think he's had more dangerous plays than the raw turnover number would reflect. So at that time, you got a little bit mad at me for saying that Kenny sucks. And you said you wanted to see another year of him free of Matt Canada before making any final decisions about if he was the future of the franchise at the quarterback position. Do you still feel that way?
It's an excellent question. Let me put it this way. I don't want to overpay for another quarterback. You know, if it's us taking a mid-round quarterback that we are not completely 100% in on, because that's how Kenny always felt to me.
Yeah.
The reason I think the Steelers took Pickett was because they were scared of missing out on another Marino. You know, they didn't want to pass on another Pitt quarterback that had come up through the ranks. Let's give him the reins. I think Kenny's a decent stopgap. Like I said, the fact that he can limit mistakes this well, that he doesn't turn the ball over, you can win a lot of games like that. We've seen that. When the running game is on and when the defense is playing well, that's a winning formula. It's not a playoff winning formula.
When you're the Steelers. When you're the Steelers, you're exactly right. So I don't want to... If it's us taking another mid-round quarterback that we are not 100% in on, I don't want to spend another first-round draft pick. I would much rather take a linebacker, an interior offensive lineman, a number one receiver if the guy's on board, a corner, or another safety that can help our depth there. The Steelers still have a lot of holes to fill in outside of quarterback. And that's what sucks, is because the Steelers team is collectively so good around Kenny. Again, we have moderate holes, like I mentioned, but we are so good collectively that we're always going to be picking in the mid to the back half of the draft. Barring us trading up and giving up assets to go and get that guy, that guy's not going to be available. So right now, I guess we're sticking it out until his rookie contract is up. But I will say this on Kenny, too. I would not pay him an extension. If it's $10 million, if it's $15 million, if it's $20 million, maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. But I'm certainly not paying Kenny Pickett like a franchise quarterback today. I'm not. If his contract was up today, I would not give him an extension. I would look elsewhere. I tried to put it on Canada. I tried to put it on the skill position talent. It's not that. Canada is a problem.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, but it is. Kenny's not good. Kenny's not a good quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that, of course, those things are factors as well. Bad play calling, not real high-end skill position talent. All of these things can make life harder, but at the end of the day, on a vacuum, what is he doing at a high level? Like, he's
Nothing.
just not good. And I think this is a problem that teams will sort of work their way into at times, is when you do feel like you have to go get a young quarterback no matter what, and you get the quote unquote best guy in what legitimately might be the worst quarterback draft class ever.
Man.
And in terms of high-end talent, I think is unquestionably going to go down as the worst. Like, the good quarterback from that class is Brock Purdy, who was the last pick of the draft. The next best guy from that class, who I still don't think is very good, but the next best guy is Sam Howell, who was a 5th-round pick. So, like, you were never going to get a guy. Everybody who was hyped up as maybe QB1. Desmond Ridder sucks. Malik Willis, Matt Corral. Some people thought those guys could push for first-round consideration. They're totally unplayable. They're not even NFL quarterbacks. They're not worth being rostered. And so when you invest in a guy who's not good because you felt like you had to, you can trap yourself for a few years waiting to see if he can turn the corner. And I just don't see that upside with Kenny. I do think they need a long-term solution at the position, but with how good they are at climbing their way to 9 wins right now, no matter what, even though this isn't the best defense that they've had, it's still clearly the strength of this team, and they still make very timely plays. I would be very intrigued in going out there and getting a veteran win-now quarterback like a Kirk Cousins when he hits the market. I just think maybe you don't have a Super Bowl ceiling with that because you're still limited elsewhere offensively. But you're a hell of a lot better than you are now because you're going to be a capable offense instead of one of the worst in the league.
Yeah, and I wouldn't like allocating all those resources because we do pay a lot of money to guys defensively. Cam, TJ, Minka, like we've invested a lot of money into those positions. That's why it is the strength of our team. You might have talked me into it. My roommate asked me this during the game. He said, if you could get Kirk Cousins, would you do it? And I was like, I don't know if I want to pay a guy $30 to $40 million, but I mean, it puts us in a different tier. It makes the Steelers contenders. You know, it really does. And I think the skill position talent may not be phenomenal. I think it's enough to win more games than what we're doing. Like I said, dude, the Steelers today could not get one sustained touchdown drive out of Kenny Pickett in this offense, and that was the difference maker. It's really disheartening to feel so close and yet so far away because we lack in the most important position on the field.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed, man. I think if Kirk hits the market, I think it's something they should definitely explore.
I will say the bright spot for the Steelers offense continues to be Jaylen Warren. You mentioned the numbers today. He's now averaging 6.2 yards per carry on the year. Najee, who unfortunately is another first-round pick bust, is averaging 3.9. Najee's the guy with 50 more carries.
He's too damn big,
I know.
man. He's too damn big.
I know, but Jaylen Warren is good, and this is a conversation that we had also several weeks ago. Why is Najee still getting the majority of the touches? Totally inexplicable.
I hate it, man. I feel like I have been wrong on every major Steelers decision of the past few years. I defended the Kenny Pickett pick.
You're an optimist.
Look, perpetually. If it was between Mitch and Kenny, if I had to deal with a year of Mitch Trubisky, I'm taking Kenny Pickett in a heartbeat 10 times out of 10. But I went to bat for Najee. I said Najee was the right pick. We needed a dynamic runner, and I still think Najee can be that. Najee, if you hear this, I don't want this to fall on deaf ears. If Najee Harris dropped 20 to 25 pounds, he would be so much better. I mean that.
Yeah, I don't think Najee's going to hear this. And if he does, somehow sorry that I just insinuated that maybe Logan meant in the CFL. But I don't see it, dude. I don't think Najee is a starting caliber running back. And for the Browns, I mean, this is just what they've been doing. Man, this was a no quarterback off. And the Browns, we've talked about it before. They're 31st in passing yards per attempt. They are 30th in passing touchdowns this year. DTR is not good, but he did just enough on that last drive for this defense to carry the way. Sure, against a limited offense, but them being at 7-3 is just so impressive and a testament to the totality of that football team.
Everybody loves making sports predictions, but there's a new app putting a whole new spin on the game. Check out Vaulted, that's spelled VLTED, Vaulted. It's an app where you can track sports predictions and participate in daily cash prize pools. You can also show off your sports knowledge against your friends, your buddies, by your boldest takes challenging your friends to see who makes the best picks. You can challenge every week in my weekly Colin Cowherd NFL pool. Do that, win money, real money. All you have to do is answer questions and risk confidence points. VLTED, Vaulted app, Vaulted Challenge. So download the Vaulted app right now, VLTED. The QR code is right there on the screen. Prove you're smarter than your friends and get the Vaulted app today. Really easy and fun to play.
But you know who just can't get it together, Logan? Who, no matter how good they look on paper, could not buy a win when they really need it, is the LA Chargers, who lose in just the most vintage fashion today to the Green Bay Packers. What do you make of this?
Dude, I read some stat today that Phillip Rivers has the most single-digit losses in NFL history. I think it's like 62 or something. I assume Herbert is right there with them.
Well, here's something I found. They're 0-5 in games this year decided by a field goal or less, which feels absolutely right. And I saw on the broadcast, since 1970, they have the most blown fourth-quarter leads, which feels like a given, but it was cool actually seeing that stat put out there.
I got a funny stat on that, too. I mean, my big takeaway from this game is that Brandon Staley is as good as gone. And we've been saying that for a couple of weeks now. I don't know if you saw the press conference clip. Wow, that was hilarious, man. Beat reporter asked him, will you continue to call Chargers plays on defense? And Staley goes, I have full confidence in our way of playing, as the play caller, in confidence in teaching, the way that we scheme. I got full confidence in that. We got to bring this group together and do it consistently, and that's where it's at. First of all, when he said that first part of this quote, yeah, man, confidence radiating off of Brandon Staley. I mean, he just looks so dejected saying that. But then he goes, you can stop asking that question, okay?
Hard.
I'm going to be calling the defenses, so we're clear.
Yeah.
You don't have to ask that again. I mean, just so clearly butthurt because his corner got burnt by Jordan Love and cost him the game. I mean, I could feel the heat radiating from Brandon Staley's ass in that clip, man. His seat is so hot right now, dude. Herbert plays a fantastic game. 260 passing yards, 73 rushing yards, 2 TDs, running his ass off. I mean, the only issue that you could possibly have with LA's offense does not fall on his shoulders. It's finishing drives in the red zone. Keenan Allen drops a TD. Austin Eckler falls on his face and just fumbles the ball away. And then the cherry on top, first-round draft pick Quentin Johnston hands a stone over here, drops, I mean, a beautifully thrown ball right in the breadbasket to him, probably 6. Probably wins them the game, just drops that TD. So no issues with the offense on Herbert's shoulders. It's other guys. Nobody is tackling on defense. Nobody's covering anybody on defense. And you let Jordan Love carve your defense up. The guy's averaging 223 yards per game this year. He goes for 322 and 2 TDs in this one. Like you said, man, once again, classic Chargers moment. Chargers gonna Charger. They just managed to always grasp defeat from the jaws of victory, man. It's hilarious to me. And again, man, the funniest part of this is just how they do it to themselves. 3rd and 20, sub 4 minutes left. You have the game in the bag. One more play and it's over. You get a defensive pass interference penalty, gives them a fresh set of downs. Wicks snaps off a 40-yard gain after he breaks a tackle. And, of course, Love goes over the top for a Dobbs TD. I want you guys to look back on the 2 biggest plays of this game for the Packers offense. I want you to look at number 43 if you got a chance. Michael Davis. That guy sucks. He gets cooked by Dobbs on the final play of the game on the seam route. Just completely burnt. And on the end around to Jaden Reed, he is engaged with a wide receiver for 5 seconds into that play. He does not realize the ball is being ran. He waits until the guy runs past him to disengage from the receiver, and then he goes, oh shit, that guy's got the ball. I might want to go tackle him. That guy stinks. So he allows 14 points by himself. But the stat that you mentioned, Carson, in the 2.5 seasons of Brandon Staley, they have had 29 games decided by 7 points or less. You can take what you want with that stat. They don't put teams away. They play in a lot of tight games, borderline, right? They're 14 and 15 in those games. Kind of typical. That's not that bad. Yeah. Honestly, being 500 in close games, sure. Carson, in 13 of the 15 losses that they have suffered, they had a lead. That's what I just can't give away. 13 of the 15 games, they had a lead.
A lead at any point?
At any point, yeah. They are 8-13 in Staley's tenure versus teams that are 500 and better, and he is 23-20 as a head coach. Some of those stats are passable. You know what? They're not even that bad. It's not even fireable, really. But when you have a top 5 quarterback and when you're a defensive-minded coach, it's just inexcusable.
Yeah.
Herbert under Staley is second in passing yards, fourth in passing TDs, and he's laid out 3 consecutive top 10 passing offenses. While on the defensive side of the ball, they've never ranked higher than 21st in scoring defense. They've never ranked higher than 20th in total yardage defensively. And they, this season, have been the worst passing defense in the NFL. Of course, last season, they blow a 27-point lead in the playoffs to the Jaguars at home. This is not to beat a dead horse. I've been saying this since the playoff game last season, but Brandon Staley's goose is cooked, and the cows, as they say, have come home to roost. So I think he's done, man. I would have, I don't know, man. I'd fire him tomorrow, bro. I don't know how Brandon Staley still has a freaking job, dude. He sucks. He's holding this team back, and this team is holding Justin Herbert back. It is just disheartening to see a guy who consistently plays so well just have his team let him down like this. This was, I don't know, man. You could say this against any Chargers loss. This just feels like the most embarrassing, the most demoralizing loss that you could suffer, and it just happens to the Chargers every single week, it seems like, man.
Yeah, if this isn't grounds for a Monday morning firing, then
yeah,
he must have Dean Spanos' search history just ready to go in the tweet drafts, bro. I don't know. It's inexplicable. And it's not just about this one game, right? Because if not for horrible drops by Allen and by Johnston, the Chargers still win this football game. It's like we talked about with Ken Dorsey. You can look at that as an isolated incident and say, hold on, if this one thing happens that wasn't actually the coach's fault, then they wouldn't get fired. But it's just really about the breaking point. It's an obvious decision that's inevitable, and you just have an excuse to do it now when you should have done it a long time ago. Nobody in the world would have been upset if you fired Brandon Staley after 2 weeks this year when they started 0-2 again. Like, it's been so obvious for so long. They're just a catastrophe, man. They are consistently up there for the most disappointing team in football. They can never field a capable defense. They can never get skill position players who legitimately help Justin Herbert. The Mike Williams injury sucks, obviously, and everybody's going to harp on that Quentin Johnston pick for a long time because he's bad. He is bad, and when Zay Flowers was there, when Jordan Addison was there, and those guys were totally in that range, that is one that you would like to have back 100 times out of 100. Still can't run the football. Like, there's nothing new here. This is just hopefully a bad enough loss to where you can finally say bye-bye, Brandon. And I do want to give props to Jordan Love for playing well in this game because were there blown coverages? Of course. It's the Chargers. Is this a bad defense? Yes. But there were some really nice moments. It was a nice ball on that touchdown pass to Dobbs. It was a pretty throw off his back foot to Christian Watson for that touchdown. He did a nice job of extending a couple plays outside the pocket. Still, he's been inconsistent this year, but the last 3 weeks, he's started to trend back up after just a really, really brutal skid. I still want to see his accuracy get better, but this has been a bit of a redeeming run from Jordan Love.
No, the 2 games he's played against the Steelers and the Chargers have definitely been his best performances. Granted, like you mentioned, the Steelers on their last legs, secondary-wise, were starting third-string safeties. The Chargers' defense is never been good, it seems like.
Yeah.
It is encouraging, though, especially because, I think Love in a lot of ways is kind of in that Kenny Pickett tier. And I don't just mean his talents. I mean that I'd probably marginally take Jordan Love just because of arm ability right now. But in the sense that these teams are kind of handcuffed to these quarterbacks because of how high, the draft picks that they used on them, right? They've had Love waiting in the wings for 3 seasons now. You're not just going to give him 1 year and then draft a new guy. He's got tenure here almost where he's going to get year 2 for sure and maybe year 3 just because teams don't want to admit their mistake immediately. I think that's why Kenny has tenure. It's like you're not going to burn a first-round pick on a QB and then go, oh, yeah, he's done after 1 season. So it is encouraging, and I still do like Jordan Love a little more than Kenny Pickett. He hasn't been super consistent, but these are definitely the 2 best performances of his career thus far.
Yeah, and they do have him on a great value contract for next year. Just $5.5 million is the base salary. And to me, that is really going to be the deciding season. I think that he will get next year, but if he is unsatisfactory at that point, you can view it as giving him 2 seasons, or you can view it as giving him 5 seasons within the organization. Like, we can't act like Jordan Love is a rookie. Jordan Love is not supposed to be where Bryce Young is. Jordan Love, wherever you put the bar at precisely, it's still his first year as a starter, but it's his 4th year as an NFL quarterback. You would hope to see him evolved beyond that. So I think he'll get another year. I'm not super inspired by what we've seen, but I think that what he probably is a low-end starter, high-end backup who no team is going to build around, but he's going to go from spot to spot, and he's going to stick around. Okay, so when we talk about the most disappointing teams in football, we can start with the Chargers. But the Buffalo Bills have maybe made the better case this year because they should have been better, and their losses have been humiliating, catastrophic. This was a bounce-back win for them, really just dominated the Jets after firing Ken Dorsey, bringing in Joe Brady as the offensive coordinator. What did you take away from Buffalo bouncing back here, Logan?
You know, I mean, I don't know if people are going to draw conclusions from this game because you do have the new offensive coordinator. I think you can draw some conclusions from Joe Brady as OC. The one thing I really did like about this was it seemed like there was a concerred effort to weaponize Josh a little more as a rusher, even if it was empty sets in the backfield with no running back. Like, and they didn't do it a ton in this game, but even the plays that they did, it was like, wow, situationally, that's a great call where you just need a first down. And again, in those sets, why those sets work, when you're going 5 wide, the defense is going to match your personnel. Even if you put a running back in the backfield that gives, or a tight end, it gives the defense leeway to put another linebacker out there, another bigger body that can slow that play down. When you go 5 wide, the defense is forced to put out extra secondary in there. It also forces the defense to spread out more to cover more zones. So it just works. And I was really, really happy that they leaned more into that. That is something that I don't think Ken Dorsey leaned on heavily enough. And I also thought situationally he ran the ball poorly. But I don't know if this speaks more to Joe Brady, taking over as the offensive coordinator as much as it does to Josh Allen's brilliance. This is just a really cerebral and controlled Josh Allen football game. This is when Josh Allen is at his peak, man. He's taking stuff over the middle. He's hitting his checkdowns. He's getting rid of the ball quickly. And again, this is against one of the league's best defenses up to this point. Like, that to me was the big difference maker, is that Josh just played controlled, cerebral, good football. And I don't know. I do think this team played with a little bit of a fire lit under their ass. I think that was the motive behind Sean McDermott doing, well, 2 motives. I said this last episode with Theo, shout out, that I thought McDermott did this in part because he wants to save his job. He knows if the Bills don't make the playoffs this year, he is probably as good as gone. But I also think that they did this to get something going in the locker room. Hey, we need to step it up. We need to do something. We will bring the hammer down. The hammer got brought down on Ken Dorsey, and they answered. The one play I also want to shout out that Joe Brady called, a masterstroke of a play call. The Jets are in man coverage, and they motion Khalil Shakir out to the left side. It takes the corner that is isolated on the right side of the field, drags him all the way across. So this does 2 things. It opens up the right side of the field, but it also reveals to Josh Allen that this is man coverage, and it allows him to read the field easier. Ty Johnson slips out to the flat where the cornerback is supposed to be in man coverage. He's not out there. Completely opens up that side of the field, and he goes for a touchdown. It was clever, man. With Ken Dorsey, it just felt like there was a lack of creativity and a lack of real design in these plays. That was a design play. That was a design to open up the right side of the field, give Ty a straightaway to go shoot to the end zone. It was brilliant, and that was another play that I really liked for Joe Brady. So again, one game, I don't know if this overarchingly speaks more to Joe Brady, but I did like the play calling more.
Yeah.
And I thought Josh Allen played a phenomenal Josh Allen game.
Yeah, I liked how Joe Brady called this game. I think that you shout out probably the play of the day. Also got James Cook wide open on the first touchdown, although I think that was mostly just a miscommunication on the Jets side. Guy just didn't follow him to the other side of the field. But it was a well-called game, and he did a really good job of simplifying things for Josh. Lots of quick passes, screens in this game, a commitment to running the football, 36 legit rush attempts, taking away Kyle Allen kneeling a couple times at the end. And the efficiency wasn't great, but it felt effective. It felt like they were consistently getting 4 yards when they needed it. And I thought that was a very good strategy coming off of last week where the wheels came off and it was a game where they made too many mistakes. it's the same thing that we saw after their first game against the Jets. That disaster, you respond by simplifying things, calling a more conservative game. That's what they did against the Raiders when Josh was super surgical. But I particularly like this because you're going up against a great defense that will punish your mistakes. And that's really their only prayer of a path to winning this game. Their offense isn't going to do anything. So yeah, simplify things, take the easy stuff over and over again, and just slowly march your way downfield. And that's what they did. And then you have the one big nuts throw from Josh to Shakir, your explosive play. He tried another one, a pretty aggressive throw, trying to fit a ball into Quentin Morris, which looked like it could have almost been picked, but actually was almost a touchdown. So you get some splashes of that. Josh has a pick in this game, but it's a totally meaningless Hail Mary at the end of the second quarter. Unfortunate for the narratives that will be pushed against him, but he played a totally clean football game. And this is what you want. You want the composure with the splashes of big-time stuff. It was just a very composed, efficient offensive performance. And they could have finished drives a little bit better, but they were consistently in Jets territory pretty much every time down the field, and that's great. I mean, this is an offense that has given fits to opposing quarterbacks. If it's Justin Herbert having his worst game of the year, Jalen Hurts having his worst game of the year, Josh the first time around having a brutal game, I think that it probably is the best defense in football. And the Bills just kind of carved them up this entire game.
Over Baltimore, over Cleveland.
I think so, man. I don't know. The Jets are dominant on all three levels. They are so good.
Wow.
I think so, dude. I don't know that anybody has been more consistently great. Like, what has been their bad game? They haven't played a bad game defensively.
I guess it would be this one, but I mean, it's a tough draw.
Yeah, that's true, actually. I guess they did let up 32 in this one, but it just felt to me like they were more outplayed. I didn't feel like they made a lot of egregious mistakes.
Also, too, people will probably use this game unfairly against New York, too, because a lot of this is, I mean, Zach Wilson 3 and out. It's like, damn, that defense has got to be tired, man, staying on the field. The Jets are definitely up there for me, but Baltimore is concretely my number one.
Okay, interesting. You do mention the other key factor here, though, which is that Zach Wilson just totally sucks. And they bring Tim Boyle in this one, man.
Yeah, man.
Who Zach Wilson is still better than, but he is clearly the worst starter in football. And, of course, he was never supposed to be a starter this season. But there were people who held out hope. There were people who thought he would have somehow soaked up Aaron Rodgers' ayahuasca wisdom and then he would play with the spirit of number 12, and they were giving him credit for these wins when, again, it was just maybe the best defense in football doing their thing. I mean, the situational statistics from the Jets are historically awful, dude. They go 0 of 11 on third down in this game. So they're converting 22.9% of their third downs this season. And I went and checked on StatMuse, which has this data back to 1991. That's pretty comfortably the worst third down rate ever. They're 6 of 23 in the red zone, 26%. And they actually did convert their one opportunity there in this game, which of course was off of a fake punt by Thomas Morstead, the only reason that they were able to drive at the end of the second quarter. That is by far the lowest in the NFL. The average is 54%. So they are under half of the average red zone efficiency. He's just awful, man. And I guess we've praised him a little bit for limiting the just catastrophically bad plays versus last year, but he still turns the ball over way too much. He is so bad in terms of his ability to go through his progressions. If his first read isn't there, he just kind of freaks out. And maybe he doesn't throw a pick, but he's going to take a sack. It's going to be a negative play of some variety. And at this point, I mean, we're almost 3 seasons deep, man. And his career yards per attempt is identical to Paxton Lynch's. His career completion percentage is lower than Johnny Football's. His career touchdown interception ratio is almost identical to Jamarcus Russell's. Like, he is by every metric, every statistical metric, every single game by the eye test, maybe with like 1 or 2 exceptions, one of the worst draft busts ever. And there is no hope for revival here. And Tim Boyle is obviously not the answer, but he's still like I think he's a below average backup, dude. And he is like no question 32 out of the 32 dudes who are starting. Well, DTR. Now that DTR is starting, you know, they can have a little party of their own, but God, is he awful.
A little Tommy DeVito. We got some Tommy DeVito love.
Tommy DeVito's in there now. Damn, dude. I mean, but those are third stringers. Those aren't backups. Those are dudes who day one were third stringers for their teams. He's an embarrassment. I'm sorry. He sucks.
He is, and I believe if I heard it correctly on the broadcast too, it wasn't just 0 of 11 in this game. It was like 20 consecutive third down failures or something. And
Yeah, dude, and they had the red zone clock going in this game. How long had it been since they scored a touchdown? And it was 3.5 games.
and I think we could be a little unfair towards Zach Wilson for some of these games, because some of these games, the Jets are moving the ball like on drives, and they just shoot themselves in the foot with a bad penalty, a hold here, something dumb. But overarchingly, I agree with you, and I think Zach probably is one of the handful of the worst starters in the league. And the biggest thing to me with the Jets is just like, excuse my French here, can y'all shit or get off the pot? Like, is Zach Wilson going to be your starter, or is he not? I'm tired of this dance, Saleh. Like, it's ass backwards, man. He goes, Zach's our guy. Zach is our quarterback. He's going to be our guy. We're keeping him in here. Zach Wilson is your quarterback or he is not. And if you're going to bench him for Tim Boyle, man, screw Tim Boyle, screw Zach Wilson. Go and get somebody who's a free agent. I don't know who the guy is. The Jets are too damn good to be consistently let down by their quarterback like this week in, week out, man. Like, Carson Wentz was a free agent for the first 10, 11 weeks of this season. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is going to win you the Super Bowl, but he's a damn
hell
sight
of a lot better
than
than Zach Wilson.
And I know Wentz has had his issues with leading a locker room and getting guys to buy in behind him, but we were looking at this as in just a talent and ability vacuum. It's not even close, man. Like,
in any world, in any respect, it's not close.
Maybe the take isn't even that Zach's a bad backup. I think you're right, bro. Zach Wilson might be a top 3 worst quarterback bust of all time. Right there with Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell. He might be 3.
He is every bit that awful. And Trey, we haven't even seen on NFL fields, right? So he's in that conversation too. Like that class, man. That class is brutal outside of Trevor. But I mean, Saleh, whatever he says in a press conference, has given the answer several times over. They brought Chris Streveler into a game last year when Zach Wilson was healthy. They bring Tim Boyle into a game when Zach Wilson is healthy. And of course they wanted him to be the backup, but he's not even a good backup. He is so bad to the point where you are turning to dudes who are not NFL quarterbacks whatsoever. And I don't know if Zach is. I really don't. And I don't want to rag on the guy because it feels like this has been obvious for so long, but people talk themselves into this.
Yeah, man.
And I think it's just the New York factor, and maybe it is racking up a decent amount of wins that he has nothing to do with. But people think maybe he's got some star quality. Maybe it's the way that he has with the older ladies. But he is like bad. One of the worst draft busts ever, and it's over. Okay, last game that we're going to talk about here. Really shocking finish. The Seahawks end up losing to the Rams, and we saw a little bit of a second-string quarterback coming in here, too. Drew Lock took a few series in this game. What do you make of this really rough loss for the Seahawks?
I don't like bagging on the guy. Geno has not been nearly as good as he was last year, man. I think this is a really optimized situation offensively. Like, this isn't a great O-line, but they've got good receiving talent here, and I really like the offensive scheme. How Pete Carroll just simplifies stuff for guys. We're going to run a bootleg here, pass is going to be there, make the throw. And it's like Geno has really struggled to, make offense in structure too. It's not like, he's missing big plays or stuff like that. Like, he's not doing the little things that he was last year, and I think that's what cost them. Now, I want to be clear about something. The Seattle Seahawks in no way should have lost this football game. In any capacity, they should not have lost this game. I thought there was a really bad call in this one. And the Rams had almost waved the white flag. They ran the ball on a 3rd and 17 in this game where I'm like, wow, do the Rams even care? Like, are they given up? They score a Henderson TD late in this one, but on a crucial third down, there's a defensive pass interference called on Devin Witherspoon in the back of the end zone with Puka. And I'm watching the game live. I thought immediately that's a horrible call. It looked like Puka just slipped, and that's exactly what happened. There's contact at the start of the route within 4 to 5 yards, but it's nothing against the rules. Puka just slips in the back of the end zone, and they throw the flag on Witherspoon, gives them a fresh set of downs, gives Henderson the TD, and it just opens that window where it was Geno who threw the pick late. No, it was Drew Lock.
No, it's Drew, yeah.
Drew throws that pick to Kendrick and gives the Rams a short field, lets them go all the way down. It has to be a super frustrating loss for the Seahawks, considering that it wasn't Geno who threw the pick, considering that The defensive pass interference is just egregious. You know, I mean, it gets the Rams within striking distance, right? But you just shouldn't lose this game if you're Seattle. So I know that it's not squarely on Geno's shoulders, and the Seattle Seahawks should not have lost this game, but I felt like during down the stretch, in the second half, if Geno executes on a few more plays, out of play action, off of a bootleg, rolling out, there were plays that he could have made that would have clinched this game. If he was on target on a few more throws, Geno could have put this game on ice, and he doesn't. And I felt that way for the majority of this season, that the Seahawks aren't a horrible team. They've got – I don't think they're great, but I think they could be better. And Geno has been a pretty big letdown for me. I don't think he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, but he's far more average than he is in climbing into top 10 conversations again.
Yeah, which is such a bummer because I thought he was a top 10 level guy coming into this year, and you just can't deny the regression. There are still the awesome moments. Like, he still has that magician quality to him outside the pocket. He can make big-time plays happen, but it's come with too much inaccuracy, too many mistakes, too much inconsistency, taking the easy stuff, just executing this offense. And you'll notice the Seahawks entered this week with a 6-3 record, but when I was talking about the NFL's good teams, they weren't even on the immediate outside looking in to me. I don't think the Seahawks are very good at all. And honestly, if Drew Lock doesn't come in to this game, and if they don't get the phantom PI call, then they still win. Lock blew it. He came in, he had 2 3-and-outs and a bad pick, but Geno has regressed. They still should win this football. I mean, they get a shot at a 55-yard field goal at the end, but that's not something you should expect your kicker to make. So Geno sort of put them in position to win the game. I guess he gets half credit for that, but they have a negative point differential. They don't have the same level quarterback play that they did last year. The run game is inconsistent. Defensively, very good secondary. That front, not very good at all. Not good against the run, and not good in terms of generating pressure. They're just super mediocre. And guess what, pal? They needed this game because they are about to go Niners, Cowboys, Niners, Eagles. The Seahawks are going to be 6-8 here in a minute, man. In all likelihood, like, those teams are way, way better than them. And, they've had a couple good wins this year. They beat the Lions in what was a weird game. They had a pick 6. They beat the Browns. I don't know how impressive that is with the level of quarterback play. So this NFC wildcard conversation is about to get even wilder, so to speak, because they have been like the second lock there. The Cowboys obviously are going to be in the playoffs. But then it's been like, Seattle's, they may not be great, but they're going to be there. Now, man, I don't know. They needed to win this game, and they are just another deeply, deeply flawed team. But the Geno thing is a bummer because I did buy into him so much. Rams, shout out Matt Stafford. That's all I really have to say. They're not good. They don't excite me, but they can beat the Seahawks. They've done it twice this year.
Somehow, man.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from this week that you want to quickly touch on?
Yeah, real quick. I enjoyed watching the Bucs-Niners game. It crushed my soul considering that, I love Baker Mayfield, and I've attached myself to the Buccaneers bandwagon. It was a really bad Baker game, specifically those final 2 drives. Gets him there. There's a post route to Mike Evans where he's breaking in the end zone. 2 guys on him. Safety breaks on the ball. Deshaun Gibson almost picks it off. The 2 defenders collide, ends up knocking the ball out. Still don't get the TD on that play where he almost throws the pick to Deshaun Gibson. Chris Godwin is open on a slant breaking in. The corner has outside leverage, so he's not on the inside of Godwin, so probably could have scored a TD there. Baker doesn't even scan the left side of the field. Frustrating. Then the next drive, I'm sitting there waving my Bucs flag going, all right, Baker, here we go, baby. Devin Tompkins, takes a ball 70, 80 yards down there, puts him right back in the red zone, and booyah! Interception, Baker. Just what we were waiting on. Baker continues to let me down, but the one thing with the Niners, man, that I think still separates them as a contender to me over, again, I'm not saying that I'm taking the Niners over the Chiefs. I'm not saying that I'm taking the Niners over the Eagles, but I think a distinct advantage they still have above those teams is the big playability. I know A.J. Brown has been eating. I know Devontae Smith has his big plays. I know Kelsey does. The Niners, just at any split second, there just always seems like there is a looming, back-breaking big play. it's just so easily manufactured by their skill talent. George Kittle, wide open. All, the entirety of this game. There's a deep shot to Ayuk that's looming. Debo's wide open. If it's a McCaffrey huge run, you think about the Jags, they go Kittle to Lloyd on that 60-yard bomb. Like, there's just always seems like a big play looming with all this skill talent. And again, the only thing that really brings them down is the volatility of Brock Purdy and how he plays week to week. But damn, man, the Niners are just loaded with skill talent. And it just seems like moreover than any other real contender that they just, at the drop of a hat, have that one in their bag. And that swings games. It legitimately does. And so shout out to the Niners for getting back on the page. Shout out to Brock Purdy for playing a really immaculate game.
Yeah.
And shout out to Baker and the Bucks doing
Why?
Baker and the Bucks things, man.
That's a little bit of a generous shout out, dude. I would say maybe that's more of a tisk. Maybe that's more of a shame on them. Purdy was awesome today.
Mm-hmm.
He's confusing. He's not that confusing, I guess, because even in this game, you see where there's a couple plays where it's like, all right, Brock, that was borderline reckless. That was pretty good. That was pretty impressive that you did that. He's got nuts, man. There's no question the guy's got balls. And he had a perfect passer rating in this game. And this is now 2 straight really, really clean games he's played, where he's also had a couple of those special moments, really nice creation. And when he is playing like that, the Niners are the best team in football. They have the highest ceiling in football. The other 2 teams in that conversation are, to me, still the Eagles and the Chiefs. The Ravens are knocking on the door. The Cowboys have just been mowing teams down again the last couple weeks. I don't think that they're quite there, but that is the game of the week, Logan. It's the Monday night game between the Eagles and the Chiefs, the Super Bowl rematch, the Kelsey Bowl. Very quickly, 30 seconds. Just what's your gut feeling for that game?
I think it's going to come down to the wire. I'd say final drive, Hurts in the offense don't get it done. I'm going to say Mahomes and them pull it out by like 6. Again, I'm just never going to bet against Patrick Mahomes in a standalone game. Give me, the Eagles have a shot to win it on the last drive, but I'm going to say they don't convert. Chiefs win a nail-biter.
All right. Interesting. I think I'm going to go Philly here. Philly's been humming a bit more recently offensively. I think that when Hurts is playing at this level, they're exceptionally difficult to beat. I think they dominate in the trenches, and we've just seen a bit too much inconsistency from that Kansas City receiving core. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a super competitive game, but right now I think that Philly's the best team in football when Hurts is playing at this level. So going to be a lot of fun, man. Going to be a lot of fun indeed, and a fascinating NFL season continues. That'll be a really big one in seeing who is the top dog in the league right now, because it's a conversation that it's felt like the answer has changed to several times already, and there are probably different answers right now depending on who you ask. So if you enjoyed this one, then as always, you can find all of our shows with video on the Nerd Sesh YouTube page, no longer on the Volume YouTube page. You'll find all of our shows and any individual volume show on their own separate YouTube page now. Hoops Tonight, 3 and Out. It applies for all of us. You can also listen to the podcast across all audio platforms, same as ever. You can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh, and you can join our Discord. That is at the link tree across our social media bios. If you just want to talk NFL, NBA with us, be part of our community, you can also check out our merch at our link tree or at thevolume.com. Logan's showing the hat there. We got the flags behind us, hoodies, shirts, etc. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.